Okay, I don't see any attendees coming in, but Mr. Chairman, if you want to begin the meeting, you may.
Yeah, so I'd like to call the planning board meeting of May 3rd to order, quorum being present. This meeting is recorded by video and audio in accordance with the state open meeting law pursuant to Section 20 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation. Additionally, all votes taken by the planning board during this and future remote meetings will be by roll call vote. If there is a public comment period, if you are calling in on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you're watching on a computer and/or device, there's a raise the hand button that you can press to be requested to speak. So the meeting's called to order. Introduction of planning board staff: David Rosen, Beverly Bookin, Jane Remsen, Hank Vaccaro, Sean Henry, of course, our planning director, Greg Catamatori, and acting community development director. So welcome, folks. We do have a single attendee this evening. So under continued business pursuant to Section 20 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, in accordance with the provisions of Mass General Law 40A, Section 9, Mass General Law 41, Gloucester Zoning Ordinance Section 5.9, cluster development and the rules and regulations governing the subdivision of land in Gloucester, the Gloucester Planning Board will hold a remote public hearing on definitive subdivision application submitted by Upper Banjo Pond LLC for division of land to permit 26 single-family residential homes at 154A, 158R, and 160 Essex Ave, Assessors Map 218, Lot 38, 39, and 46. And the applicant has asked for continuance to April 7th. I don't know if there's any other discussion that needs to happen, Greg, on this.
No, as you recall at the last meeting, we left off with a number of questions for the applicant and also looking for some confirmation. They did present their revised plans at the last meeting. And so I expect before the next meeting, we'll also have additional response from certain staff that have reviewed it in the past, and we'll review the revisions. And when I spoke to the applicant's representative early in the week, it was a vacation week last week. They need a little bit more time to prepare as well. And with no meeting of the board on March 17th, they've asked for a request to continue to April 7th.
So we need a motion for that, right?
Motion to continue.
Yep.
I'd like to make one comment. I did get a telephone call from a citizen yesterday who identified themselves and was interested in this particular case. And after some discussion, I found out that individual indicated that they were in favor of the cluster zoning situation. And I told them to be sure to be there on the 7th. So I just thought I'd mention that. I'll be happy to enter a motion or second the motion to continue.
All right, we'll take that as a motion. You want to make a second this time, Jane, for a change?
Second.
Thank you.
Okay.
So
Roll call vote.
Yeah. Go ahead, Greg.
Member Noonan.
Yes.
Member McCarl.
Yes.
Member Bookin.
Yes.
Member Cook. Oh wait, he's absent. Sorry.
Thank you.
Member Henry.
Yes.
Member Remsen.
Yes.
And Member Rosen.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so next under other business, the request for release of covenant Seaglass Lane, definitive subdivision 602 and 606 Washington Street. Greg, I know you had a conversation today. I overheard it in the drive-through.
Yeah, and I'm promoting in John Judd. It looks like he may be doing some double duty here on these two requests. And I'm going to stop sharing this. And so I think you'll recall a couple months back, we received a request for release of covenant for unit 7A, I believe it was. One of the last units in this 3-lot, 6-unit development, Seaglass Lane off of Washington Street. There was some remaining work to be done. There's a couple of little cleanup items with some landscaping, but the applicant has posted a cash deposit the retainage that's required under the subdivision regulations for kind of the performance guarantee for a period of 18 months. The treasurer's office has confirmed receipt of that. So we have a filed Form F, which identifies the security, as well as the final Form M release request for the last unit in the development unit. I believe it's 7B. So at this point, I don't think there's anything outstanding. I closed the loop again with Public Works and Engineering. They're satisfied with the construction that's been completed. And again, at this point, there'll be some housekeeping in the spring, and then hopefully it's just a waiting game with, 6 happy homeowners and a homeowners association that will take on the responsibility of the maintenance of the roadway for this 3-lot subdivision.
So just a simple motion for release of covenant, yeah?
I move that we release the covenant for Seaglass Lane, 602 to 606 Washington Street.
Motion, a second?
Second.
Thank you, Beverly. Roll call vote, please.
Member Noonan,
Yes.
Member McCarl,
yes,
Member Bookin,
Yes.
Member Henry,
Yes.
Member Remsen,
Yes.
and Member Rosen.
Yes.
Thank you, David.
Thanks for your work on that, John.
No heavy lifting tonight.
No, well, you did do the corralling of the files, so.
Thank you. Do you need me for the next item, Greg?
I don't think so. I did correspond with Deb Ellison, and we had a couple of edits which are reflective in the draft, and I think there might be just a couple of minor things with the board, but a fairly straightforward decision. So I don't think we need you, but you're always welcome to stay on.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to, okay, why don't I hold on and I can interject if needed on the
Okay.
land court aspect. Thank you.
Okay.
So next, under other business, decision to adopt 227 Atlantic, a 3-lot definitive subdivision, applicant Tedesco. And go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, so the board approved the subdivision on June, wow, January 20th. And since that time, there's been a lot occupying this office, but I provided a draft of the decision. There were not too many particulars other than enumerating all of the waiver requests that were documented on the plan. And the only real condition beyond standard conditions related to the cadence of how the subdivision is implemented was relating to this was restricted to 3 single-family homes. There also was some language that would not preclude the ability to pursue ADUs on the lots. And I did receive a note from David. Perhaps we should just make that a little bit more specific to a reference to the section of the zoning ordinance, section 524, to make that perfectly clear what that use is. And I'm happy to do that. And otherwise, also because of the kind of remoteness, it is, kind of a longer dead end road. There was the condition related to residential sprinkler systems, which was also incorporated in the same condition. And beyond that, it's fairly standard condition, similar to other subdivision approvals.
Thank you,
And I'm
Greg.
looking to my editor who just raised her
Yes,
hand.
yes, thank you, Jane.
Well, actually, did you mention 2 ADUs? Just now? It'd be 1 per each lot, so it'd be 3.
Yes,
Yeah.
it wouldn't preclude a lot from pursuing it,
Right,
pursuing
okay.
an ADU,
And then
sorry.
my only edit is on the point number 8. I think you're missing the word section
On point
before
number
4.7.
8. Hold on one second. I'm sure you're right, Jane, but let me just call up the draft. And you said on number 8, Yes, section 4.7. And I'm amending that right now.
And then, oops, as far as Deb's Ellison's comment that some of the waivers listed on the plan are not listed here.
Yeah, that was prior to them being amended. So there was a list in the a listing in the original application, which had 7 waiver requests. The plans reflect 11. And some of those were also kind of as the plan discussion evolved. I think actually, frankly, they were probably reflective on the plan, but you know, kind of for the purposes of the application were a little bit truncated to bring across the high points because some of them relate to each other. The road length is kind of in 2 places. There's a section in section 4 that talks about road length, and then also in the appendix, there's design standards for road length. So only one was mentioned, and so there were a couple of redundancies that were enumerated out in the full 11, which are incorporated at this point.
That's all my comments.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. Jane, the floor is yours.
I move that we accept that we adopt the decision for 227 Atlantic Road 3-lot definitive subdivision.
A second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Beverly. Roll call vote, please.
Member Noonan,
Yes.
Member McCarl,
Yes,
Member Bookin,
Yes.
Member Henry,
Yes.
Member Remsen,
Yes.
and Member Rosen.
Yes.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for hanging out.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
So motion to adjourn, I guess, is the next order of business with our next regular scheduled meeting of the planning board to be held on April 7th.
So
Rick,
Jane,
let
Jane
me
just
ask
wants-
the one question before we adjourn.
And I have a
Go
question.
Are we not supposed to re-elect their officers at some point?
We're supposed to do it every year.
That's what I was thinking. Are we supposed to do that, or should we make it a point of record?
We can do that for sure. We just.
Or you can put it on the agenda for the next meeting,
Yeah, why don't we go ahead? Let's do that, Greg.
because it ought to
Okay.
be, it ought to be advertised that we're
Yeah.
gonna do that.
Yes.
And then I'll be happy to enter a motion to adjourn.
But
But-
hang on.
Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I just had a question before the meeting started,
Yeah.
to get an update on where the zoning ordinance is and that we proposed.
Sure.
And what are the upcoming meetings for that?
Yep. So there was a session of P&D last night, and you know, again, I think you know, Councilor Grow did a very good job of going through each one of the amendments, and also in some instances, welcome Doug Cook. In some instances, decided to break the motions down further. Again, the P&D gets to make their own motions. You know, the areas of consideration for amendment are what were advertised, but they chose to, in some instances, kind of break up some of the motions that had a couple of things within them to focus the discussion. So they moved, I think, about 5 motions out of committee to public hearing that will open next
Next week.
Tuesday night on March, I should know the date because I have so many
Is it
meetings next
9th?
week. March 8th.
Henry Chairman.
And they are the amendments that are focused around 2-family and the 2-family use as they were presented from the planning board, and also the dimensions around the creation of 2-family, essentially the doubling of lot area in the larger lot districts, and also the change to the footnote of the dimensional requirements for 1 and 2-family, and the lot width. Those amendments that were related to height, including 1 and 2-family, 3-family, and in the downtown district, as well as multifamily as of right in the R5 district, have been held in committee, and they will discuss them further at a P&D meeting, I believe the first P&D meeting in April, which will be on April 6th. And next Wednesday night is a joint meeting of the planning board and the city council beginning at 6 p.m. with a focus on the MBTA community guidelines from DHCD on the implementation of the MBTA communities legislation that was passed last January in the economic development bill. So I will be providing a presentation that will probably be a lift from what has been presented from the state. They have been conducting their outreach meetings over the last 2 months. The guidelines came out in late December of last year, and they began outreach meetings in January and into February, mostly led by Secretary Keneally from the Executive Office of Economic Development. And so that presentation will be available to planning board members, to the council. It's an information session, and the public is encouraged, if they want to provide comments, to submit them directly to the mayor's office via email. There is a section on the city website dedicated to information around MBTA communities. The quickest way to find it is if you go to the home page and you see the search box, just type in MBTA and it will take you directly to that. And
sure.
so,
Greg, be sure to ask them where they expect us to put 2,400 units
yeah,
for their MBTA area, because I think that's totally out of the question.
so, and
Ridiculous.
I'll go into that. It's about capacity rather than production. It's a nuance, but we'll certainly talk about that next week. So there is this, if anyone goes to the state website, mass.gov, and types in MBTA, there's a load of information about MBTA communities there as well. And the state is accepting, or DHCD is accepting public comment through their website through March 31st. And I believe it's also the intention of the administration to provide comment before that deadline as well. So I will go through, what's expected of communities and the timeframes and deadlines associated with it next Wednesday night. And then I believe, again, based on the council taking up the balance of the amendments on the 6th, they'll likely schedule a public hearing on the other half of the amendments later in April. Also, I can't anticipate whether they'll take any action on the proposed amendments that they've moved out of P&D next Tuesday. And if not, their next regularly scheduled city council meeting would be on the 22nd of March.
Honey, could you bring me my phone? Oops.
So Greg, the motions they moved out of P&D, I thought they recommended or not recommended them. So are they recommending them to the city council?
Yeah, so nothing moved unless it had at least 2 P&D members voting in favor. And frankly, even if it was a motion that didn't move in terms of a recommendation, it would still move to the council for public hearing. So it's only those that they decided to not make a recommendation on at all, not even make a motion on, that remain in committee. But the ones that they did move, I believe there may have been 1 or 2 that had a unanimous positive vote to recommend, and then there were several that were 2 in favor, 1 opposed. So they will, again, that's purely just a recommendation at a committee. They'll then hold public hearing, and each counselor can vote their conscience at the end of the public hearing.
Thanks. And how long do you expect the MBTA meeting to go?
I think the presentation will probably be 20 minutes or so. Questions, again, I think if there are questions that remain after my presentation, and I certainly have questions too, that's some of what the administration is looking for, are the types of questions or comments to provide to DHCD. These are draft guidelines.
But these are
So,
questions from us, not from the public, right?
correct.
So the public is not going to be making comments and asking questions.
Not at this meeting. It's an information session, and
Okay.
the way the administration would like to take feedback is through a dedicated
Yeah,
email
you
address.
said that.
Yeah.
I just wasn't
Would-
clear on whether the public
Yep.
was allowed to talk, because if they
Yep.
were, that would take a lot longer,
Yes.
obviously.
Okay, so I have received an invitation to that meeting on the 9th. I think the rest of
Yes.
you have as well, from Joanne Sesnos, right?
Senos, yep.
Senos.
Yep.
And this is it. This is
Yes.
about MT. Okay, at 6
MT.
o'clock.
Yep.
Okay. All right, just so,
So we'll have a full Hollywood Squares. It'll be the full planning board, to the extent that anyone has a potential conflict with the meeting.
I do.
And then also the council. Okay, you mentioned that, Hank, yes. And it will be recorded as well, and you can certainly take a look at it after the fact. But again, I think the intention is to try to provide feedback if you have it, questions surrounding the draft guidelines. And the state has not indicated when they will make them final. They're anticipating something later in late spring, early summer, when they'll be made final. And I'll give you all of the deadlines that the state is imposing to comply with it, and also the consequences if cities and towns do not.
So would we get more out of it if we did homework or not?
I provided, I think, a couple of weeks back, a link
You
to
did,
the
to a
presentation.
webinar or something? Yeah.
Yeah, and if you want to take a look at that, it's going to be very similar. I will probably use some of the slide deck from the state. Again, this is feedback, but the feedback is really to the state, because this is not our initiation. This is a product of the state law and DHCD's interpretation of how that state law should be implemented. So it will be, we are required to make a presentation to the city council. Again, I think it's important for the planning board to be present as well. And that is the requirement. You must present this information to the community. And then the community has the opportunity to provide feedback. But it is, I'm going to be doing my best to try to stay true to what the state has proposed as the guidelines.
Okay.
could
Thank
you
you.
resend that?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, because I don't remember seeing it, but that doesn't mean anything.
Yep.
But it was just nicer if it would just be there to have.
Sure.
it.
Absolutely.
So Greg, the meeting on the 8th is P&D presenting what they discussed and voted on last night to the city council for the public hearing and for the city council to vote.
So it is actually, they opened and continued the public hearing just because of, they have to open a public hearing within 65 days. They did that based on the noticing requirement. They didn't hit that first date to actually have the discussion because they weren't prepared. So they've continued the hearing to the 8th. So it is really the opening of the public hearing on the proposed amendments. But what they intend to do is really only focus discussion on the subset of amendments that have been moved out of committee.
Yep. Okay. Thanks.
And did they take testimony from the public at the P&D meeting, or there just were citizens there to listen, or what was?
So they've
Yes.
held 3 P&D meetings. The first 2, I made a presentation of the initial, the proposal as it left the planning board public hearing and the planning board's recommendations. They did take questions and comments that evening. I made a follow-up presentation 2 weeks later. There were additional questions at that point, and that's when it moved into, they held 5 ward meetings, which were.
And Sean was our hero because he presented at every single one and took most of the flack. Yeah, Sean,
They didn't call me a hero.
I'm calling you a hero.
So I returned to the P&D on, I keep track of dates. 19th. And so They distilled down questions from the ward meetings. And then there was a little bit more time if there were additional questions from counselors. I was provided a very long list of questions. And so last night,
100 and something.
in
Ridiculous.
advance of
Yeah.
their deliberation last night, I made another presentation that was really to try to help clarify and respond to some of the questions, or most of the questions that were asked. And then they deliberated on the amendments and have moved a subset of them to public hearing.
If you download the, if you go to the city website, you can download the packet. It was the P&D packet last night, and that actually includes all of the presentations that Greg had made to date, plus the questions from the ward meetings. I don't think it included the questions from the counselors themselves, but all the questions that happened at the ward meetings, and then notes, minutes with questions and commentary that came in during Greg's presentation, sort of interspersed with his presentation. So it's quite a lengthy package of stuff. The one thing that wasn't in there was the commentary from other city staff. I looked at it today to try to find Mike Hale's memo, and that's not in there. And there was no memo from, I can't remember who else.
Yeah, so Krishna Basu provided an email. I'm sure they'll make that, a part of it at some point. Just as we have discussed, the state law was also changed in terms of the required vote for some of these amendments, because as they relate to potentially increasing allowance of housing beyond the current base zoning, and particularly for multifamily, or dimensional requirements that allow for additional housing, in particularly related to height. So some of them will only require a simple majority vote. And Krishna provided an analysis of the proposed amendments and which one would require what, in terms of a six vote or a 5-member vote of the city council. And also the memo on infrastructure should be there at some point. That was just confirming that there's capacity in both water and sewer utilities in the city for growth.
Move for adjournment, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion. We have a second for roll call vote, please.
Member Noonan,
Yes.
Member McCarl,
Yes.
Member Bookin,
Yes.
Member Cook,
Yes.
Member Henry,
Yes.
Member Remsen,
Yes.
and Member Rosen.
Yes.
Okay, have a great evening and
Have a great.
See you
safe
next month.
travels.
To
See you next
Paris,
month.
to
Greg,
France. You
thanks
going to
for all
France?
your, where are you going? You're
Yeah,
going
where are you
somewhere?
going?
I'm going to France.
Oh,
Well,
Next
where
week.
in France, though? Where in France? A big state, a big country.
Aix-en-Provence.
Have fun.
Oh, wonderful. Sounds great.
Yeah.
For a minute, I thought Greg was going to France. I'm like, wait, no.
Yeah.
No.
Greg's not
it's
going
He
anywhere.
can't ever leave.
No.
Greg,
Okay, good
thanks
night,
for
everyone.
all your work. I hope people are
Yes.
thanking you from the mayor's office,
Yes.
because
Thank you, Greg.
you're
Great
doing,
job last
Thank you,
night.
Sean. Thank you,
Yes.
Sean, as well, for
Yep.
carrying the ball a lot.
yep.
Thank you.
Sean, just so you know, I've petitioned the mayor's office for a good guy citation for fighting the fight in social media on behalf of the city. So you should be expecting that recognition sometime soon.
Very good. Very good.
Okay, good night,
That'll
everyone.
really make your day, Sean, right?
Yeah.
Right.
See
Have a
you
good
all.
night.
Good night.
Bye.